Wallace here.
Schwengel here.
Combs,
Here.
Combs here, Johnson here.
Okay, would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before we get underway, Rob Burke from UW Extension is here. I think he knows the board members all right, but I wonder if Paul and Diana would just kind of fill Rob a little bit on your background so that he's going to be, well, you don't have to get into depth there.
Paul Schwengel, I was a sales rep in the sporting goods industry for 30-plus years, and I've lived up here since 1999. I retired last year and started to be involved in town activities.
Diana Wallace, I'm also retired. My areas of expertise were marketing primarily with negotiating contracts.
Okay, and I think the rest he's familiar with, so. Okay, let's go right away to the Towns Association memo. Hopefully everybody's had an opportunity to read it. If not, the gist is donations,
Oh, the donation one?
yeah,
Donation, yeah, okay. Yeah.
the gist is that we're kind of not able to donate. Did you get it? No. Okay. Yeah, that's right. Anybody have a comment, a question on this?
I don't think it says you can't donate,
Right.
but it's gonna take an elector vote to allow us to provide funds to organizations, but, I mean, it's pretty forward that, and this, I have tried to research this all week long to find out what a civil function, civic, not civil, civic function is. That's a tough one. There's just no hard definition for what a civic function is. You can look up what the word civic means, you can look up what the word function means, but all I'm coming across are things like, allocating money to let the president go speak at a grand opening for Walmart. That doesn't apply here. So, it's gonna take an elector vote to let us do it. But then, what is it that we're gonna
Well,
provide funds for? Because
I-
it's not donations.
I was, as I read through this and it listed the things that fit the definition of things that you could, by statute, provide funds for with elector vote. One of them was advertising the town. And I would think Door County North would qualify for advertising the town if they are truly, bona fide 501c, and I believe they are. Then I think they would have to be very careful to make sure that the whole town, whether they were members or not, would need to be advertised under those parameters of the law.
Is that what that job of that person is to do? Is to provide advertising for the town? Or is that person's job to provide administrative assistance to their membership?
Well, maybe that was something that we discussed before the very first
Long time ago.
provision of funds was made, that
Right.
if we're contributing that much money out of the 30% of the room tax dollars, then it better go to advertise the town. So,
We're right back to the beginning.
yeah,
There's a source called Words and Phrases that take a phrase like civic function, not separate words, but the phrase civic function, and define it the way courts have defined it. I could try to get that and see if I can get some definitions that way.
The one thing when I read through this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it indicates that the taxes collected can't be used unless as a donation. But the room tax isn't paid by the citizens of the town. That's a separate fund.
No,
right.
no, it is not.
It is not a separate fund. It is the 30% that comes back to the
Right.
municipality.
Right, but it comes back to the municipality from the boarding places. It's not provided in your tax bill. So the citizens, each individual citizen or parcel holder is not paying that money.
Yes, they are.
Sure, property owner would be.
In effect, they are.
Yeah.
Because it becomes part of your calculation to come up with your mill rate. It's treated just like the income that we get from the state for roads,
Okay.
or the shared revenue that we get from the state for shared revenue.
Or PILT.
Right, that's how you have to think of that money.
Okay, that's what I was
It's coming,
asking.
it's coming from another entity, but it is used in the calculation of your mill rate. So it is elector funds.
Did this come up for a reason? I wasn't here last time. Did someone ask for a donation and?
Last time we had a sheet with all of the requests for donations, and it amounted to over $50,000.
And one of the donation requests was from the Historical Society for money that was to be used for building a display shed or a storage shed. And then the question came up, in a town, if you're gonna build a building, you have to have elector approval. So we were asked to find out whether we needed to have elector approval to give them the money if it was going to be used for building a shed. I will also tell you that a couple of days ago, I was delivered a piece of paper from the Historical Society changing their request of donation. And what it says is they'd like to resubmit their request for funds to help pay for a concrete slab for a future donated or new building to house exhibits and hold meetings, which will be built not with the town funds, but with donations and volunteer labor. But I don't get that statement, but they've dropped their request to $2,500, from $15,000 to $2,500.
Is there a date on that?
September 25th.
Do we consider the cost of the community coordinator a donation? Isn't that actually a bill that we pay as part of Northern Door? I mean, same way with fireworks or even the Humane Society.
It's donations. I mean, that's what it's always been called.
Yeah, that's how historically it's been requested, and we've given it to them.
Because do we have a choice on Humane Society?
Well, sure we do. We could actually give them nothing. However, I don't think it's fair. What they send us basically is a bill for the
Yeah.
animals in Liberty Grove. And while some of them aren't necessarily from Liberty Grove, they're picked up in Liberty Grove, I think we'd be churlish to not pay for our own.
So are we hung up on the word donation
Well,
in some instances?
when I contacted the Towns Association, her email back to me said, see the attached article describing when donations can be made by a town, which is the donation myth stuff. It's likely that the groups you described are not eligible for a donation if it would amount to a private benefit.
If Door County North were to bill us for promoting the town, does that change it?
I would think it would. Same way with the Humane Society. I'm just wondering if, we're getting wrapped up in nomenclature.
No, because the nomenclature is linked to statute. There, according to statute, at least from what I read, there's no such thing as a donation from the town.
That's what I mean, that's what I'm saying. Maybe the right term is really a bill from some of these entities, not from like what is it,
It's
the
appropriating
Historical
money.
Society, yeah.
It's appropriating money, and that seems to be very strictly proscribed as far as what type of organizations qualify for appropriated funds from tax dollars, no matter what you call it.
Let me add a little amendment to that comment I made before. If the town were to contract with Door County North to promote the town and build the town,
I mean, it does say that for the purpose of advertising the town would be
Right.
a legitimate purpose. So if we couched it in terms of part of their function is to advertise the town, to attract industry is another function, and then it also says for museums or entertainment. I mean, those things are all legitimate purposes that this says it can do.
the question becomes is, okay, I would assume that we would, one of the requirements would be that they promote the town, not individual members' businesses, but the entire town. Now, I don't know whether that fits with their,
I think it's just
Charge
like
or not?
old Ellison Bay days, or the newest one, that on Cork Summer, or any of the tractor shows, it does promote the town in whole, because people visit the whole, generally the whole area. So it isn't, pointed at just Shoreline Restaurant, for instance. It's pointed at the whole area is what they're trying to attract people to.
I think perhaps there may need to be a little more onus incumbent on the individual groups that are asking for appropriated funds. As an example, the blues concert, that is an acceptable appropriation of funds, is in musical entertainment. If they were to couch their request for appropriated funds in order to support a band on such and such a date or in the month of for musical entertainment, would that not fit?
That's, there's just a couple of them that what they're asking for doesn't fit in the definitions that the statutes provide, and it's not, I'm not saying that they shouldn't get it. What I'm saying is we need to change this so that it is correct. It's correct.
And then does it still need to go to the electors?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
thought that's what,
now if,
It would only have to go if you still just treat it as a donation, but as
Correct.
John suggested, if you make it a contract,
right,
then it wouldn't.
then that does not.
And as John suggested too, I think if you have, using Door North as the example, if you have Door North, I'm not sure what its mission is, or its mission statement is, but if its mission statement is broader than just to benefit the members of their association, or it's changed to be made broader than just the mission of improving the business of their members, then it would fit more into a public purpose as well, like advertising the town in addition to the members that are on there. So it might be incumbent on the people who are asking for donations or appropriations to make sure that their charters or mission statements, or whatever you wanna call them, are also in keeping with what the statute says about giving money.
Well, and that's what we did in the very beginning, the first year. And what we asked for was, proof.
Yeah.
Show us the document, show us what you've done to promote the town and all the businesses in the town. And that was something that was very hard to get. I don't know that we ever got anything tangible other than, take a look at our Facebook page. And the Facebook page, supported, it was National Ice Cream Day. So, if we're gonna do this, and I'm not saying, I'm not against it, but we need to, that contract, if you will, needs to be real specific on what we expect to have happen.
I think the
So-
presentation this year, went a lot farther than they've
Yeah.
ever gone before in supporting what is going on.
With Door County North, I agree. Some of them, however, have become more vague. Oh, we want to do a few
Right.
more things to promote,
Right.
And that's what needs to have a fine point put on it.
Well, okay, like, the Ellison Bay Service Group, new fundraising, what is that?
That doesn't-
Exactly,
that doesn't-
exactly.
So,
Fine point.
before they get that $2,200, what exactly is that?
Exactly.
And then if it falls under the categories of the things that are allowed, that's great,
Well, the fundraising could be a program for them to develop funds.
I guess at this point in time, if you have the list of the requests for donations,
I didn't bring mine.
well, we had the Historical Society, then Door County North, and then the Ellison Bay Service Group. Old Ellison Bay Days, new fundraising, Barrels of Holiday Decorating, Humane Society, and Gills Rock Fireworks. I guess my thinking at this point in time is maybe the appropriate way to go about this is to contract with in this case, the Ellison Bay Service Club to provide the holiday decorations and barrels. And if there is somebody in Gills Rock, that you would contract with that group. And as far as the Gills Rock Advancement Association, you contract with them for the fireworks. And you could do that as well for Old Ellison Bay Days. I don't know how you, well,
If we were providing the contract, we'd also have to provide probably the specific dollar amount that
Yes.
we're willing,
Yep.
as opposed to.
Yep.
Keep it
Yep.
simple but
Jerry
tight.
has a question.
I kind of like the idea of a town band myself.
Town
play?
band.
Well, it could be this group, could be the Sour Note 7 or something like that. But there is, when you do read that, it does say, or for the employment of other bands to give concerts and municipal entertainment. So if, say, in the case of Door County North, would approach the town for a concert at, at the Women's Club, I think that probably qualifies, I think.
But that's the kind of stuff that
Yep.
they need to put in their request.
Oh, yeah, I mean, that, yeah.
I think Gary has a question.
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
know it's not time for public input, but over the last week, I've been thinking, especially after last Tuesday with the Historical Society, and I'm not speaking for the Historical Society, but the only one in response to Nancy's comment that's been given a chance to justify their request to the board is Door County North. The other people have not been given the opportunity to come in and justify what they are asking for. And I think you need to offer them that opportunity so that, like Nancy says, they know exactly, like, for instance, I know why the Ellison Bay Service Club was asking for the extra $6,500. You do not. But I asked that question during this last week, and I think they need to come in and explain to you why they think they need an extra $6,500 for the upcoming year for Old Ellison Bay Days.
And I would say, prior to that happening, they probably need to see this publication so they can refer to the statute and the criteria so they can define their request appropriately.
Now, let me play the devil's advocate here. What was that figure we're looking at in the proposed budget? Room tax of,
The
30,
income or the expense?
30-some, well, no, actually, it's closer to 60,000
For the income,
for the income.
and then 35,024 for the expense.
Right. Considering the levy override that we're looking at, reducing the request by 60-some thousand, takes a big substantial bite out. I'm not suggesting we do that. I honestly believe that the room tax money ought to be used to further the business and the community, but that's a choice I think we have to kind of consider.
Well, like we discussed last time, if the levy cap override fails, we have to find somehow to cut 600,000 out of our budget. Room tax money is not the only thing on the chopping block.
That's just not, that's a non-issue, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
so.
Well, right now, we have, in the proposed budget, we've already set aside, what, 36,000? Into something, basically, we can't do without a contract. So how do we resolve this?
And do we have time?
I don't see that it would be difficult to create a contract for what these people are asking this money for, if that's the way we're gonna go with this.
That's true. A contract does not have to be in place until the funds are
No,
released.
that's true.
So I don't see any problem in doing
Okay.
it that way. Do we want to do you want to talk at all about the 2,500 to the, because we cut out historical money altogether. Do you want to talk about adding in the 2,500 that they're asking for now, or is it too late?
What was the request again?
They're
For the
asking
slab.
for $2,500. Well,
Yeah.
what she said here, although I don't think she worded this correctly, is that they just are looking for $2,500 for operations of the Historical Society. The paragraph ahead says that they want it for a slab for a foundation for a future donated or new building to house exhibits and hold meetings, which will be built not with town funds, but with donations and volunteer labor.
And I, and if the slab doesn't get built this year, you know, that sounds a little loosey-goosey to me. I don't necessarily have a problem with providing or paying for a bill for a slab, but I would hate to see $2,500 just not get used, because, gosh, we didn't get a building donated, and we don't have enough money to build a building or enough donations.
What if we set aside the 2,500 and make it be contingent upon putting in the slab? You know, you get ready to pour the slab and we'll write you a check.
Well, that, part of that whole thing is also when when we talk about writing this contract is, for any of them, it's based on are we gonna have a levy override?
Right.
If we don't have it, the
Well, yeah.
contract isn't gonna go through anyways, but we
Right.
should step forward and start a contract with them at least, cause, Christmas does come early sometimes.
I would make it contingent on having shown a little bit more toward the accumulation of money for that building. If it's the slab and it just sits there forever and they never get around,
Well, that's true.
they never get around to it, then it's a bridge to nowhere.
And it might not be the right size slab. I mean, they've
For
gotta have a
building that's
plan.
Donated, yeah.
Gotta have a plan.
Well, and does that fit the statute? They're a private organization.
Let me read F under whatever this is. It says, town buildings. Now this is for the electors, authorize the town board to purchase, lease, or construct buildings for the use of the town, to combine for this purpose the town's funds with those of a society or corporation doing business or located in the town, and to accept contributions of money, labor, or space for this purpose.
It's okay.
Yeah, kind of sounds like it
It's a
falls under that.
society, yeah.
I think
For the
with
use of the
this,
town.
with this contract, I think you need a definite opinion from the town association on it before we go
Too far, yeah.
gung ho on it. It might be the same thing, just a different name, so we should get an opinion, in my,
John, referring to
Opinion.
sub F,
Yep,
for the use of the town,
yeah.
seems to be the key phrase. Would a building for displays or for meetings be for the use of the town? Because the following qualifying phrase, to combine for this purpose, I take for this purpose to be for the use of the town.
Is there some urgency to these requests? Is it something that we can,
Yes.
Well,
yeah.
it needs to be put into our budget.
Yeah,
Right.
somewhere.
So, we stick the dollar amount in the budget. We wait to see if the budget gets passed. And then hammer out how it's gonna work.
You make it two conditions then. First, that the override goes through, because then there wouldn't be any money for it. And then condition on whether we have the authority to do it to begin with under the donation statutes. Make it two conditions. Because if the override doesn't go through, it's a moot point at that point.
Correct.
I'd just like to point out that the first paragraph under the title donation on page 1 of the donation myth article, in general, under what is called the public purpose doctrine, is that spelled out anyplace? State and local units of government can spend public monies only for public rather than private purposes. What is the definition of private? I would say this would be private individuals or business corporations. Wouldn't be anything like a not-for-profit. A not-for-profit is for the public. It has to qualify as a 501c3, and it's for the public. It's not to set up a business, a private business. I think that what we need is a clear determination of what the public purpose doctrine is and what the word
Well, I think
private
somewhere in this, it does spell out that it has to be a bona fide not-for-profit. And I know it's in here, I remember reading it.
We've been doing this for years.
Yeah,
I don't know why,
Well, 3 years.
we've been paying for fireworks for,
Well, fireworks
generations.
forever, yeah,
Now, wouldn't fireworks be a civic function?
yeah.
yeah, absolutely. It's not a private function, it's for the public.
But then all
But
the rest,
we-
all the rest of this stuff gets a little mixed up, or mixed.
Well, some parts of it, yes or no.
But remember, the fireworks were taken out of the general budget until what, I think it was 3 years ago or 4 years ago, and it was then taken out of the room tax funds.
Yeah. Well, I think we were right to do that.
Well, I think we need, first, let's get the opinion of the Towns Association as to whether a contract would kind of help.
Well, I think all we really need is a clear definition of what a request should be for. And from then, just go on and proceed as we have in the past.
But it doesn't seem like we're comfortable with this, totally with this definition.
Well,
Well-
in the past, it hasn't gone up to $50,000 plus.
exactly,
Now you're
exactly.
talking big bucks.
Yep,
Plus the fact you're sitting here asking the town electors to, right now, we're looking at a $600,000 override. We have the opportunity, if you will, or they do, to say no. You know, you've got 50 or 60,000 sitting out there, you could apply to that. Now, that being said, they can't do it that way. It's either yes or no. They can't tell you how you're gonna
But they
do
could
this,
think, but certainly that would be the thought process.
yeah. Well, let's get the opinion of the Towns Association first.
Yeah.
Obviously, we are going to have a few more meetings, so. Okay, budget numbers, line by line review. Bud has provided us with the latest here, I believe.
but is this that was in front of us here, is that the same thing that was in our packet online?
The one tonight with the A on top, I made some further modifications, mainly in the tax levy revenue section,
Okay,
Oh, wait, let's get to that point.
page
got it.
4.
Yes.
Okay, so,
Clearing, combining things up and hopefully clearing them up a little bit on line 185, the managed forest law tax of 3,600, budgeted 4,775 coming in. The DNR in lieu of tax on 194, I switched these two around because they weren't quite on the report here correctly. The lieu of tax budgeted at 22,000 and then 17,795 actually coming in. So that is separated from the MFL up on 185 because that MFL is a series of different programs and different rates per acre that are paid by the taxpayers and actually comes in through the tax bill. So that should be in the tax category. The lieu of tax comes as a check from the DNR on DNR lands that they don't pay full taxes on. So that is the difference between that and the one that we mailed out or sent out. Then there was a question on the other, on line 247, the $30,000 that was labeled as other budgeted last year. That was actually what was to come from coastal byways for the kiosks. And we got 91, 98 this year, and we actually had gotten 18,000 something
The year before.
in December of last year. So, we got 18,396 in December of 13, and the 9198 this year.
So are we thinking we're not gonna have anything in 2015?
We're pretty much done with those things.
Oh, okay.
They've all been installed.
So, and then there was a doubling up in that DNR lieu of tax, the 22,000 ended up getting in there twice. So that came out, and then that resulted in the bottom line levy going up by about $20,000 over the one that I mailed out,
Yeah.
that we sent out earlier. So that's what put the current levy, according to the sheets handed out tonight, at $2,256,000, or the overage of $641,757. That's where we're sitting right now. Now, that's not taking into account what happened here with the donations, the number 2,500 coming in from the historicals.
I don't think we added that in.
No, we took the entire amount out, so that has to be added in.
This reflects removal of the 15 grand,
Right.
So should,
but not the addition of 2,500.
are we adding back in the 25?
Depends on what
That depends on the opinion, I guess, of the,
the group wants to do here tonight.
I'd like to get an opinion.
And then there was something different in the fire board levy.
Right, for staff raises.
where was that?
225, too.
Did that change from?
Fire board.
225, 200.
That's the same.
That stayed the same though, right?
Is that,
It shouldn't have from last time.
It was 225, the last time, right?
that's what it,
Yeah.
yes.
So it hasn't
Okay.
changed.
It should, because I emailed the office at our last fire board meeting, excuse me. It was pointed out that, I forget how long, there has not been a raise for either the firefighters or for the administrative staff.
6 and 8 years.
Yeah, it was a long time.
So this number.
What should that
would
number be then?
Be different?
I'll have that for you in a sec.
Okay, good, because I don't have it with me.
What line are we looking at?
Is it in this?
44,
No.
or 45.
Oh,
Line 45, yeah.
The total, it would be 2/3 of this amount. You have a 6665, 6,665. 2/3 of that total would be the town's share. 6,665, but 2/3 of that. So that's
So
about
it's about 4,400.
4,400.
So that should
And
add
36.
4,400 to the 225, 200?
Yes.
4436 approximately.
Mhm.
Okay.
And then, that 5,000 that the town had put aside, that the town board had
Right.
approved, is that in here someplace?
The
That was a
grant
one,
fund.
that was a one-time, right?
But-
That's in our year-end encumbered funds.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
encumbered then,
That's
okay.
encumbered.
Because that's gonna probably come up sooner than later now.
And that's already been done, and it is part of the encumbered fund.
Perfect, okay.
So we're going to need to add 4,400 again, 4436 to the levy overage.
We're at about 60, 600.
646 something.
There's my calculator in the car. 4436. whoops.
646, 193,
disappeared.
13.
What do you want, 4436 plus what?
646, 193, 13.
646, 193, 13.
What number line?
That's the new
The
levy
bottom
override.
line, levy override.
261.
Oh, you came up with, wait a minute,
Oh, did I not do it right?
650, 629? Wait, we got two figures going here.
646, 193,
13.
13.
Yep, that's what I have.
Oh, I was using Bud's figure there.
We're going in the wrong direction.
We've gone,
Couple of other things that I was asked to check on, having to do with the numbers that we've allocated for things. At the well in Wills Park, it appears that the well is only capped, which is a good thing. That means that it could be utilized for the, you know, we've set aside 10,000 to install water down there.
Great.
We might have a well. Fuel from the county, yes, we can purchase diesel fuel from the county. Their price is higher than ours, and we would have to drive to the county highway shop on 57 to fill our trucks. So
That
that's,
won't work.
we can understand that we've looked into it, and it's not cost effective to,
Would the county like to buy oil from us? We have a
They'd
better
have to
price.
drive up here.
Maybe the electors should look in the county budget. Not ours.
Okay, any other revelations? Then I would suggest that we look at the, and it's not a, it's, would have been on the one that came in the packet. And the last page of that. The effects of, the overrides.
that's gonna be a little different now.
Yeah, it is gonna be a little bit different now.
As soon as I find a sheet. I made a new one, if I can find it here. Okay. The levy, average for 4436 would be $2.15 per thousand. That 4,400 won't change that hardly at all. So figure $2.15 per thousand.
For roughly $650,000 in with 646.
For that number that we, yeah.
Yeah. So we're looking at 215 per, so you're looking at approximately 200, what,
215.
215 something?
On the $100,000
$100,000
parcel.
parcel.
Say it again,
Approximately 215, did you do a cents on that, or?
Percent,
No, not percent, but just cents, 215,
28,
215.28.
maybe a couple cents more because of the 4,400.
So that's taking, if we were to stay at the current level that we can go to, is the 1,614,000 plus. You're now talking on $1,000, $100,000, right? Valuation, you're going to go up approximately $65? $67.
$67 for every $100,000 of value.
Over last
Over
year.
last
Oh,
year.
over last year, yeah.
So a $200,000 homeowner, property owner would pay $134 a year extra.
More than what they paid
This
last
year.
year,
Right.
if the override goes through.
How much more was that?
134 a year, Paul.
On 200,000.
About $11 a month.
And we have to remind the townspeople too, though, that the lion's share of what that's going to be are from people who don't live here year-round anyway. The second homeowner is,
Unless we have specific data to support that.
Yeah.
When you say lion's share, what does that mean? You know?
Well, but does that really make a difference to?
no,
It doesn't make any difference to the
Right.
electorate.
We're all still paying it.
we're all still
Yeah.
paying it, but at the same time, though, the people who live here in January are getting the snow plowing done, and the people who are in Florida and have a second home here are not benefiting from it.
Except if they have a fire, we've plowed the roads.
There you go, well, and, of course, and all the other services that are provided.
Yeah.
Right, that's the responsibility you take on when you own something in
Yep.
another area.
Yeah.
You aren't exempt because you didn't live here for 6 months.
Well, I suppose you could make the argument, if we didn't have those, would we need all the services that we've got? Or the
I
better
don't
way to
think
look
we ought
at
to go
that
there.
is, the
I
better
don't-
way to look at that is, we have the good services that we have because of the second, third homeowners.
I think what we need to do is do what Fred, Diana had mentioned it at one time, Paul had mentioned it as well. What are the implications of not having the override?
What don't we get?
I mean, idle threats, so to speak, as they've been interpreted to be made, idle threats, so to speak, are not going to be specific enough.
Well, that kind of, Janet and I got into the discussion, and that jumps ahead a little bit on the.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine, because it's all integral part of this. That jumps ahead to 6 a little bit. And it goes back to a question that we were posed last time. Do we look in advance at what, if the levy ride does not go through, what the cuts are?
Has to be,
I think we have to.
absolutely.
No, you don't. Why?
Fred
Janet
Anderson.
does not.
Fred Anderson was here yesterday. He obviously couldn't make it tonight. He probably won't be able to come to anything until he's through October. He said that when they did the referendum for school, what you do is you make a statement of what the money is, what you are providing, not, and you don't go back on how much you need. So if we present our budget to the public, you don't present a budget and then say, well, here's our budget. But we could also do this. Because if what you say Plan B is less, they're gonna say, all right, then do that. Why are you asking us for X when you say you can do Y? You don't do that. You just say, this is our budget, this is what we need.
Well,
If we don't get the override, we will have to go back and make adjustments. I think any smart person is gonna understand where the adjustments are gonna be made.
But Fred's the one who said, what resonates with me, he said, you know, you gotta give it specific, he said, you're gonna have to tell the parents that their kid is not gonna be picked up after school at a certain hour because there's no funding for the bus, whatever, I don't know.
Second bus.
Well, right,
He
and,
made it very concrete, in other words, though.
right, except until we actually go back to and have to make adjustments, you honestly can't say what's going to get adjusted. What you can say is, these are the services that are provided, and this is going to have to be looked at, and you can be specific. And Rob, tell me if I'm wrong. You can be specific and you can say, included in these numbers is our plow trucks going out to plow for snow removal. But if we have to cut in our budget, we may not be able to respond on Christmas Day. We may have to go into the 72-hour statute, and you will have to deal with snow on your roads until our guys, they won't be able to go out on the holidays. Stuff like
I
that.
think I get it. What you're saying then is, this is what is being provided now. We have, a good road cleanup, we have, all of the things that we do have. These are all things that would have to be looked at and perhaps be reduced or eliminated if we don't have the funds to fund them.
And this includes the library budget, in past years, we've looked at the fire budget
Yeah.
and we've cut things.
Yeah.
We've gone back to the fire board and said, no, we're not gonna fund that. Well, this includes the library budget, the fire budget, all of that will be looked at a little closer and possibly some of that cut.
It also includes the reserves that we're putting aside, correct?
Yep.
Oh,
it
yeah.
in-
Which
it
is
in-
an easy
yeah.
target.
Well,
The other thing is, if you look at it, and it's, if you have $200,000 property value, it's like $11 a month, and 300 is $16 a month. Or you can annualize it if you wanted to. What am I getting for that additional?
$11. That's, you cannot go to somebody and say, here is our budget, but we've also got another one that we can also work with and it's less. You
Right.
can't,
I think because the reserve funds are an easy target, I think we have to take great care to, as you're saying or suggesting, that we put a positive spin on, these are the services you're getting, to make it clear that this is the road to financial solvency and to sound financial planning is to have a capital improvement fund, to have a contingency fund, and not have to have a knee-jerk borrowing reaction every time something comes up.
Right, we're in this because nothing's been done like
That's
this for
correct.
7 or 8
Right.
years, or
And
whatever
we
the
have to
number
make
is.
that really clear that that's a definite benefit, or it will be low-hanging fruit for,
15
Or-
years.
50,
If you borrow for those purposes, you're gonna pay
somewhat
more in the long term.
I was talking to a friend of mine who's very involved in his local politics, and his view of the world is, well, if taxes go up $134, that represents, in his mind, possibly 2 weeks' worth of groceries for someone. So that's one perspective or opinion. I look at it and I go, you're telling me I might have to pay $11 or $16 a month more? What's that, It's a bottle of wine or, so there's something,
I can't even describe exactly what I'm getting at, but it's just, it's a perspective, you know, one person's gonna say, oh my gosh, there's 2 weeks of groceries I'm not gonna have this year. And someone else is gonna say, oh, come on, you know, $11 a month, it's a bottle of wine, you know.
But if it's explained $11 a month, then it's not so scary.
And 300,000 would be about 16 bucks a month. If my head math is right.
Well, 90,000, for example, for almost 14% of the levy override is for $90,000 for a capital improvement fund for the fire department, so as to avoid the borrowing and the extra money that way. There are others that would be in there for that reason as well. My point before about the second homeowner, though, is, and I don't know what, maybe the lion's share was the wrong phrase, and I don't have anything to back it up, but I do know that a good number of people are second homeowners as opposed to their living here year-round. And it may, again, may be a completely false assumption, is that if you own a second home in Door County, let's just assume, it would be, from your perspective, not a big deal to pay the $11 a month. Because, I mean, that's just an assumption. If you've got a home someplace else and you've got one here, that perspective is what I was getting at before. And there has to be a good portion of the tax base where they're second homeowners as opposed to, or property owners.
But I don't think we're gonna have them.
No, that's not
No,
our
they're not gonna-
audience here.
They're
That's
not
not
the
who's
audience.
gonna
Oh, I
be
understand, they're not the
voting.
electors,
Yeah.
at the same time, though.
But
They're the one, a great majority will come to the hearing and vote.
Be second homeowners?
So many go south, why do you?
They might not travel from Florida, but they will travel from Illinois.
Really? That's happened in the past?
Yep.
Not in a considerable amount, though, Janet. We've only found a few that have been good.
But you need to ask them the question then. What is the value of your property here and your taxes? And what are you paying wherever your major house is?
Right, and also.
And that taxes, I'll guarantee you, is gonna be much higher.
Right, plus it's also that, you know, you gotta come across that if it doesn't get changed, we're just gonna deteriorate and your property value will just
Yeah.
decline.
Well, that's a message for everybody, though.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
not
yeah.
just, we just have to, you know, we really have to be thoughtful about who the majority of our audience is, who are the people that are really gonna vote on this. And that's, because we can't be all things to all people.
No,
No.
At the same time, though, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
No, at the same time, though, I think, I don't think we're proposing a separate budget. But I don't think we're doing our homework if we don't explain what the consequences of those cuts are in a lot more specific ways than just saying, well, we have another budget, we'll go to Plan A, and we don't know what Plan A is, but you'll be sorry if you don't pass Plan B. But we won't tell you what Plan A is, because you might not be affected by the fact that on Christmas, the snow is not gonna be removed. I mean, certainly we know, for example, that let's call them, for the sake of a better word, the donations will be completely out of the picture. We know that. Does it mean we're gonna have to borrow more, for example? I mean, if that's a consequence, and then we don't explain the fact that the town will have to go further into debt. And we learned, for example, that it's, like for highways, well, you don't borrow for highways. You don't borrow for operational. That's the point. We don't borrow for operational matters, because you'd never get a loan that way. The feds would be all over that. Where do we get the funds then? Where is it coming from? We talked about the parks, for example, not selling them, of course, but in terms of maintaining the parks.
Well, the second part of this whole deal is getting your authorization to spend over 5,000 a mile.
Exactly.
These two things kind of go hand in hand, because if you don't get the over 5,000 a mile, well, you're done already.
I guess I look at this and look at the meetings we've had, look at the individual input that we've had and the input from the audience and so forth that we've had. I guess I'd like to take the high ground here and say what we're trying to do is provide the best possible place, community, and do the best possible job we can for the community. And if that means that we have to have a levy override of the $641,000, I think that's, if you will, a noble cause. I mean, we all know the consequences of not doing it. We're back to what's been going on for a long, long time.
Well, this is one of the things too, we can ask this focus group. I mean, that's
Yeah.
why we're bringing them in, is
Yeah.
to say, hey, does this make any sense?
Yeah.
What's an effective argument? And, when we talk about $600,000 or $700,000, that's a huge amount of money. Talk about $11 or $16 a month, it takes,
Takes a lot of the sting out of it, but it's also how well this piece is received by people, if they read it, if they understand
Yeah.
it.
Was there, what was the cover letter that went, did we go today? Did we send it out today?
Yesterday.
Yesterday?
Yeah, it went out in today's mail, and it was the cover letter number 1 that you sent over.
Oh, okay.
Do we have copies of that?
That's
I
gonna
can
generate
put it
a
in
lot
your
of discussion
mailbox.
among people,
Yeah.
there's no question about it. I asked Janet, I think at the last meeting, how many calls did she get from this being posted on the website? And you got one?
No,
You
No,
didn't get any.
no.
Cause I've told a number of people that it's been there, but when they open it up in the mail, maybe that'll stimulate some interest and, some reality.
Well, yeah, let's hope.
yeah. I mean, our biggest enemy could be apathy more than any dollar amount,
Well,
Certainly a factor.
yes, it could be the apathy of the people who really should come to the meeting and voice their opinion. Because if they don't come, they're going to let, as the quote from the Press Gazette,
Yeah.
they're gonna let the small little vocal group control what's happening.
Right.
And they have not turned up.
They have not turned up.
You don't know what's going on.
Although they've been invited.
Sure. I'd just like to simplify things a little. We're gonna have a focus group meeting here at 6:30 next Thursday, not tomorrow, but a week from tomorrow. I think a lot's gonna come out of that. In a simplified way, I think we can justify this budget by saying this is the amount that's required to maintain property values, number one. And number two, avoid future higher tax increases by paying smaller amounts now. Just two simple points that I think are fully justifiable.
Do we know that's a fact? Avoiding future higher tax?
I think so.
If you have to borrow, yeah, Bud's worked out the
Yeah.
numbers where, if we have to borrow for these different things, then, yeah, it costs more money for us to take out a loan than it does for us to have a levy increase.
Right, I
We
think if
don't
we
have
explain that you've, looked out 5 and 10 years, that's gonna be a real impressive piece.
Yes.
It's
Absolutely.
already looking at that time frame. It isn't like this is just a Band-Aid today.
And part of that is the mechanism, as Nancy has pointed out so clearly, of setting up contingency funds and other funds for capital projects ahead that we know are gonna have to come. And the cost will be lower on that because we have the money now. We don't have to go out and borrow it then at higher prices.
Okay, what I'm hearing is, I guess, by consensus is we're, the 640,
Whatever it is.
646 is what we're going for. Okay. Then let's focus in on the focus group for next week. How are we gonna handle that? And do we want a meeting on Tuesday prior to that? Yes.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, we're gonna have to put together some sort of a presentation,
Yeah.
you know, a visual.
Maybe think it through. It's gonna be a time-consuming meeting.
Yeah, and it's gonna have to be based on,
To set up
On
the
that.
structure
This.
of the meeting, so we know what we're talking about, and get the reactions that we want.
Well, this is the structure here,
right,
the framework.
so we just do bullet points and,
Well, you have to give the background though. You have to give the levy cap another go. You have to give borrowing a go
right, but you can still do that.
to explain, yeah. Because without the context of both the limitations on the 5,000 per mile, plus the fact too, for example, the corroboration that we received from the executive director of the Towns Association just last, or 2 weeks ago, where he, the question to him was, are we the only town that's cringing under the burden of the levy cap? And the answer was absolutely not. That goes for towns and villages, not just towns. And he tried to marshal a whole bunch of statistics just to show us a little bit more concretely how everybody is under the same restriction that way. And that, you know, we heard the opposite at the last town meeting, or subsequent to that, I think it was, where we're the only town in Wisconsin
Yeah.
who's suffering under the levy cap and has to borrow. And that's completely contrary to the truth. But it was cited, and I bet people would believe it too.
I'd like to bring up sort of a fresh idea that occurred to me last week, and I called Janet and explained it to her. We have a figure now of 646, 193, 13. When we started this budget process, what was that figure, 783,000 or something?
We're up to 800 at
We
one
were
time.
up to 800.
Okay. I think as part of the focus group thing, we should show to people that we have cut $220-some-odd thousand already before we come to them. And I think we should be specific about where we have cut what
I found
and
it.
the amount.
I found the original, and I went through, and there are so many lines where changes were made that I think, you know, to do that would be 20, 25 minutes alone. But I do think it might be a good thing to just say the bottom line is, you know, the line item meeting that we had on August 14th, we started out being 751,000 over. We have managed to bring it down to 640 something over. I think that's a statement to make.
And maybe we could just select out the major items we've cut that we thought originally in the budget were justified, but we've just cut them out and we're not gonna do them.
Good. Take some
Yeah, I think, I don't know about specific line items, but I would agree with that and say, you know, and stress the point that we received the individual committees' requests for budget concerns, and the initial number was 800, and we're down to 600, and that's what we need.
Yeah.
Whatever those numbers were that you just quoted, but I mean, to use it that way, but not to go into, well, we took out for bread and water.
Right.
Can we decide how many hours we spent to make those cuts?
Well,
8, 10 hours of
It's,
full finance board meeting.
I mean, it's worth a statement of how many meetings were held and,
And then can we ask the focus group, do you think people were interested to know where we've cut and what we've cut
You know,
and how much?
I've used this phrase, I used it at work, and it's based on my wife. I called it the deranged hobo, not her. I think it's natural for, if I've said something for over the course of 40 years, 45 years of marriage, sometimes, I don't know if Danielle's absorbed it or not, but if a perfect stranger comes along, or the deranged hobo, as I call it, and says exactly the same thing that I've been saying for 45 years, all of a sudden it seems to have this credibility. In part,
with children.
in part, Rob is the deranged hobo in this case. But we have there's another deranged hobo who's not here tonight, who did say at one point, back in September, that he could not find any wiggle room in this budget at all. He basically endorsed what we've been saying. And I think a lot is going to have to do with what Hugh says either in favor of or in opposition to this as well. Unfortunately, because among certain people, he has credibility, and he's the deranged hobo.
Well, and
But hasn't that happened to you?
it's true.
Yes, many times.
I mean, it is true that he did make that statement, that after looking and reviewing and looking through the documents, he finally realized what the situation is, and he agreed, there's nothing else to do. So,
And asked, in that same breath, asked Bud, what's the bottom line here, Bud? What would it be per thousand
yes,
mill rate, if we needed, at that point, he said 900,000.
Yeah.
It was 900,000 at that point. Which led, I think, all of us to infer from what he said, that he was in agreement with what he saw.
And he said the only way to do it was to raise taxes. There's no,
Exactly.
you can't borrow.
Can't borrow. That's the
Yeah.
whole point. That was his mantra about borrowing.
We don't
We
have-
understand that.
We don't have fees to raise of any consequence.
Okay, let's,
so Rob, you're our deranged hobo.
It's a very powerful position to be in, Rob.
that's true.
You have incredible credibility as the deranged hobo. It doesn't last for a lifetime or anything. It only lasts a short time.
They only last one meeting.
It's
Who
only
knows?
last.
You get one shot at it.
Oh, boy. Well, let's list bullet points that we want to make at the focus group.
What was that next week?
We're not gonna
Tuesday's
have a
meeting?
That's a
special
week
meeting
from
on the next
Thursday.
Tuesday?
Well, but let's.
Well, no, I think we need something,
We gotta have something.
we need a framework
Right.
that we can go back to and tweak. That's the
The
Tuesday night.
historical context has to be the levy override and what
Right.
happened since 2005.
Yeah, I've got that down.
Well, I would certainly go according to what, the same flow as this letter. I mean, that's the basis, so we can start out with an introduction.
Well, and I think that's correct. You go back to the levy cap has had what consequences?
And not
go
just
from
for
there.
us
Oh,
either.
no.
For
And I think
It's
the
everybody.
fact that we even spoke to the Towns Association's executive director in person several
Yes.
weeks ago, and he absolutely corroborated what we were talking about. We are not alone in this at all.
Right.
That the Towns Association has been, what they're trying to do, they said legislatively, they don't think that they'd be able to get the levy cap removed. But to be realistic, what they're trying to do is to remove more and more functions from under the cap, as they did in Act 20 from 2013. That includes fire service, garbage collection,
Snow plowing.
snow plowing.
And stormwater management.
They want to expand that list so that municipalities don't have to hurt by borrowing for capital, at least anyway.
Well, I think another bullet point is borrowing does not solve this problem.
Well, it's sort of like, you know, the levy cap, what is it? Bing, bing, bing. How long has it been in place?
2005.
Yeah. Is there a way to get around it? And you go to the borrowing and that.
What are the consequences of borrowing?
Mm-hmm.
You can't borrow for operational, because no lender will give you a loan, a long-term loan. You could borrow for bridge loans, so to speak, for short terms, for your cash flow problem, but you cannot borrow for long-term.
Right.
Feds will not allow it.
But you can do this in bullet form, borrowing, and then you say, what
Exactly.
can you borrow for, what can't you borrow for? What are the other ways of getting around it?
Well, and then
That's why we're here.
Act
That's why
20
we're here.
from 2013 allows for the board, a town board, to,
Act 20 allows for a town board by resolution to impose fees on the tax bill for state mandated services that are on that particular list. But the downside of that is they have to reduce the levy
By that
cap
amount.
by that amount unless by a mandated resolution, the town registered voters say, no, you don't have to do that.
mandated referendum.
Yeah, it's a referendum.
A
Yeah.
referendum,
Right.
I mean, that's a nice way of getting into the, you know, you're building your case for the big picture, and then you start backing into the detail to support this.
And the specific things, Lou, are maintenance like plowing.
Snow plowing, stormwater management, fire protection, garbage collection,
How about library?
no.
No, contingencies.
And, or recycling or utilities, none of those are others, only those four. However, when we spoke to the executive director, he said in the very next session, they are going to be lobbying hard for more mandated services to be allowed under Act 20. He did not specify which ones.
It includes fees and payments in lieu of taxes or pilot, garbage collection, fire protection, snow plowing, street sweeping, and stormwater management. Those are the 5 things. And what he said is their legislative goal is to sort of maybe expand that list a little bit further.
Because so many municipalities are just screaming, they're choking to death under the caps.
And the question then, like Nancy just explained, what can a municipality do if this provision applies and it does not wish to adjust its property tax limit? The statute states a municipality's governing body, town board, can adopt a resolution stating that the levy limit should not be reduced by imposing the fees, but not reduce the levy limit. The resolution must then be approved by a referendum. And then we got further support, legal support. We had a legal question that Nancy raised as well with the Towns Association Legal Counsel who was there. And that question had not come up yet, because it seemed like that was in conflict, the referendum was in conflict with what a town can do, meaning you can override the levy with a town meeting as opposed to a referendum. And legal counsel says, no, a referendum is required, no matter what the population of the municipality would be.
It is a deciding factor.
And who would be the voters in a referendum? Just
Registered.
Registered
Right.
voters?
Registered voters, not people who
Okay,
appear at a
not
town
say
meeting, right. You'd have to be a registered voter in this municipality in order to vote on a referendum. And from a political point of view, that would seem like it might have more traction than a town meeting. It might be more subject to approval.
Did you just say registered voter?
Yes,
It has to, you have to be a
referendum.
registered voter.
So then our folks that live elsewhere
You
aren't
would not
necessarily,
be able to.
They cannot vote.
so they're not our audience.
Well, for the
Well, that would be,
referendum, that
that's
would
only
be.
Act 20. Act 20,
There's a consequence too, though.
Oh,
That's a consequence
yes.
of
absolutely.
not having the levy right, would be to, if we missed the vote on the 2014.
Right.
Because the election should have taken place.
Right.
It would have taken place at the general election. But 2015, the election would occur during the
Spring
spring election.
Good.
Yeah, it could.
In
as
the
long
odd
as-
years, it says so.
First Tuesday.
And I guess for me, after reading about this and hearing about this and asking all the questions that I had about it, it made me feel a little more comfortable with the override. Honestly, I honestly don't think the override will go. I'm hoping and praying it will, but I have to look at it realistically, and boy, that's gonna be an uphill thing. And if it doesn't, there's no doubt about it that we are going to have to cut services. You just can't take that much money out of your budget without really impacting. And knowing that Act 20 is out there as a fallback for, okay, say the override fails, we have to cut services, we go through another horrible winter like we did last year, and suddenly there's a little bit different feeling about services. Act 20 is there to be able to put some of those services back with no more than a board resolution on a fee basis. And then it's up to the electors, it's up to the registered voters to decide whether or not to leave that outside of the cap or not. And in my mind, I'm comfortable, just like the Gills Rock vote, I am comfortable when 400 people or more come in and say yes or no. That is the will of the people. I am not comfortable when something as critical as municipal services can be manhandled by a group of 60 people. So whichever way the chips would fall on that, I guess I would feel that at least the people were represented.
Did they go over how the fees would be imposed, the mechanism of the fees?
It would be.
It would be sort of like what we were talking about with garbage service, that was turned down last year. It would be on the tax bill as a fee.
Okay.
And this is for the tax year of 2015.
This would be
Well,
for
no, it
the
would go
tax
to
year for
2016.
2016.
It would be voted on in
What are we gonna
2015.
do for 2015?
Then
Have
you-
nothing happening.
It'd be on your 2015 bill
It'll be on your 2015 bill.
that is owed in
In
2016.
16, yeah.
So you would figure out your fire board budget and distribute that as a fee?
Right,
Right.
right. And same thing for stormwater management. You know, we talked about Cedar Street and how, we've set aside 35,000, which covers the pipe and
I don't-
nothing else.
I can't see us coming up with more than about $300,000 in those things.
And what? Snow plowing, fire protection?
Snow plowing, you probably,
Fire protection.
can we come up with some rough figures, so when we get to the,
Why don't,
I think we've got enough
I
on
don't
our
think we
plate
wanna
right now
cross
with the
that
levy override.
Okay.
This is,
This is the
That's
fallback,
separate,
this is a
yeah.
fallback
That's-
plan that
Yeah.
we'd have to,
we don't wanna bring it up in the focus
No.
group.
no.
You get too much information, people get confused, and then nothing
Exactly.
happens.
exactly.
We want to be as clear as possible.
Okay, so what are the bullet points so far?
Well, what I wrote down, although Lou, when you had that piece of paper in your hand, and you lost me on that one entirely. So if you lost me, and I've been coming to these meetings, you'd lose your audience too.
Right,
are you
On
talking
Act
about Act
20?
20?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
no,
don't
no,
think
no,
that's
oh, no,
something.
okay,
I-
because I
I'm
stopped
not
writing
saying
at that point in time.
Act 20 is a fallback for us as a
Okay.
way of getting a second bite at the apple, but this time through a referendum.
Okay,
um,
Well, what
because this is the law.
okay, so what I wrote down, I hope somebody else wrote stuff down. You start out with a levy cap, what is it? And whatever those bullets are. But, when you put this stuff up on a board, it's gotta be something people look at and they can kinda take it in almost
Right.
instantly. If we've got something just smashed in there with 20 different lines on one page,
Not gonna work.
we wanna know how long it's been in place, because I think that's part of the cover letter as well. We haven't had an increase since 2005, 7? What was it?
Well, that's when the levy cap took place.
Yeah,
We've had, I think the,
When it first went into place, they allowed, I think the first year it was 3%.
Yes, yep.
And then or 2%, then it went up to 3%, then it went down to 1, and then it
And it went
went
away.
down to 0.
We're talking about other townships. What I'm thinking is, what about here in Door County? Who else is struggling?
I think Gardner, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I'm not sure which town
One
it
of the
was, but
southern
one of
ones.
them south of Sturgeon
But
Bay
not
there.
Gibraltar or,
Gibraltar's talking about it.
Gibraltar's talking about it.
Didn't, that executive director, he did, a
did
graph,
some-
he was gonna send that to us.
He never did he?
He didn't,
He
let's
was gonna
get
send
it.
it to the town.
because I mean, it would be nice to have kind of a single bullet saying, okay, this, the percentage of towns in Wisconsin are struggling with this. But then you always want to bring it home, in my perspective, and say, what's, and just, you don't have to bring up every single town in Door County either. It's just, what's that, Bailey's Harbor, Ephraim,
You
They
have to,
basically did Northern Door municipalities.
you
But at
have
the
to
same
point,
time-
you have to point out, though, that the other towns may not have the same complications that we do.
Exactly.
Because they have had a cap reserve account
You can do
all
that.
along.
And
I
many
mean-
of them don't have the mileage of roads that we
Right.
have.
I mean, Bailey's Harbor's they got a cap reserve account of over $2 million. And that's because all along, in their budget, they've always put in, in every budget, they've socked in 25,000, 50,000.
Yep.
We have not done that.
And then there's this, the graphic that we put in here in
Yeah,
terms
so I'd
of the
look
mill
at it,
rate,
yeah.
at least anyway.
No, you gotta bring up the borrowing
Yeah,
aspect
how do you
of
get
that.
around it, the borrowing?
Well, and the borrowing goes against the levy cap though,
Right,
so you're.
but that's what you want to, I mean, if people
goes
say, well, we'll
against
just
the levy
borrow the
cap.
money, well, then it's,
You can't
It's
borrow money for
neutralized.
operational purposes.
Yeah.
There is no lender that will allow money to be loaned on a long-term basis for operational purposes, because that means there's a crisis in your cash flow.
just give me a bullet point.
Borrowing only puts you further into the hole,
Okay.
both in terms of.
Creates debt.
Creates debt, the debt service is gets more expensive, and it reduces the amount that you could levy as you pay back.
There you go. There you
Pay
go.
back the levy.
Borrowing is outside the levy cap. Borrowing, your debt service is outside the cap. So you can borrow,
Cause you've got a credit line here,
You can
40
borrow-
million plus, I
yeah,
think.
you can borrow $10 million and you can levy all your debt service on that. Then you put your operations are gonna come outside that number.
But then, how is it then that the
That's what
repayment
we
of the
do.
debt reduces the levy though?
Well, as your debt service that you need to pay in interest and principal goes down, the levy would go down because you're doing less debt service.
Right.
But now this year, our cap increased a whopping $39,000 for operations. So that's outside the debt service.
Okay, but we're appropriately mired in the detail, but we can't get into these kinds of conversations.
But another bullet to keep going on is the need to develop capital reserves, cause people do know that other townships have bigger capital reserves. Well, we can only get that if we contribute to it. So that's a bullet point. I mean,
And then how much of the 640, I know 90,000 is a capital reserve set aside for the fire, for fire protection.
Another 200,000 is set aside.
Right.
So it's 290,000 out of the 640? That's a good percentage.
It's almost half.
It's almost half.
And for contingency, the recommended percentage is 25.
Yeah.
Be ready for, let the county do it,
Do,
Highways.
the
Well,
highways,
let's see
You
here.
already have
You
that.
got the
That's
figures there.
The highways.
page here.
right. But that's gonna, it's gonna come out.
Well, in that
And then-
mailer, we've disproved a lot of
Right.
the county do it.
But it may have to be explained again and re-emphasized.
Because
Well,
that's where the money is.
Have we selected the people for the focus group? Invited them?
Well, if it's selected them, did they get invited, Bud?
Yes, they did. They all received letters. The letter indicated call if you cannot make it. And only one person called, and we've already replaced that one person with another person.
Good.
I think we need to make sure that when this focus group is here, that this not, if there's other people that come to listen besides the individuals in the focus group, you gotta keep it limited to your focus group.
Right.
Well, somebody had a good idea that we actually put this focus group up here.
Well, we can segregate them by the chairs too, right?
Sort of like, when I had the plan commission focus group on the banks and borrowing and stuff like that. The audience was, you know, where they are, the focus
They were
group was
over
at a
there.
long table over there, and the plan commission was up here.
Yeah, they were definitely segregated, and they made a difference.
Well, I think you put the focus group right there.
And they didn't have to
And then-
get up necessarily to speak, though. They were able to speak from that really
Yep.
facilitated the meeting a lot, too.
Could you run a table up in the middle and have them facing each other? So they'd be right in.
Or they wanna face the person that's presenting.
How many is the focus group, if I could ask?
12?
12.
And you'll have one person from your board will make the presentation, say 10 or 15 minutes. And you can make it simple, saying we're in a bind and we've tightened this budget up as much as we can. We're looking for an override so we can raise $640,000. If we don't get it, we're gonna have to cut services and projects and things in all sorts of areas, road building, road maintenance, no reserve funds, and we're gonna be in a tough shape if we don't get it. Tell them that, and then your focus group then ask them, well, what do you think? What should we do? You know, just listen to them.
Yep.
And Rob's point's a good one. One of the bullet points up front, because then everybody is sort of hanging on tenterhooks as to what this is gonna mean for me. The thing that we just came up with tonight, the $11 a month, or however you wanna put it per 100,000, should be something right up front, so that we know what we're talking about at that point. People know that we're talking about $67 for every $100,000 of value more than what they're paying now.
That's a huge point, because that's what defeated the other one, was the misunderstanding of how much your taxes were gonna change. You know, when we had the last year's budget, that's what, when somebody spoke and says, well, what do I get for my $4,000? You know, that's why we have to make that super clear that it's either amount per year, per 100, or per 300, or whatever you wanna put it on, or per month, but it's gotta be clear that this is our taxes, not your whole tax bill.
Yeah, and I think that maybe should be right at the beginning. This is not affecting your county taxes, your school taxes, your other taxes, your NWTI.
Yeah. Where is that? Oh, it's right here at the beginning.
That's right here at the beginning.
I wouldn't go down that road.
You don't think
If
so?
I don't think I can be here for the focus group
Right.
to be a facilitator, but if I were, I'd really emphasize that have one person who makes a presentation and touches all your points and do it pretty quickly.
Yep.
And do it in broad strokes. They'll have information if they wanna get into details. And then ask them, well, so this is our situation, you know, what we're proposing is this override. And ask them what they think about it, what advice they have for you, or what are their opinions of it, and then listen to them, and don't start arguing with them.
Right.
You know, don't sit up there and start saying, well, you know, you said that, but you don't really know the truth, because this is blah, blah. Just listen to them. And it would be good if everybody, and you guys would all sit out here, and so you're not like, you know, we're up here and you're down there. Just try to make it more egalitarian and conversational, and just listen to them, because they have a lot of good things to say. They might give you some good ideas, or they might tell you that it's hopeless. You know, who
knows, but the fact is, you just gotta listen to them and don't try to educate them or don't try to convince them, and, cause hopefully they'll tell you something that will educate you, and that's what you're there for, so.
That
Give
makes
a brief
sense.
presentation and then hand it off to them in the form of a question, and that's our situation, our predicament. That's our idea for a solution, what do you think? Does it have a chance? And then just make sure everybody in the focus group says something, you know?
Did you have a chance to read through the mailer thing?
Yeah.
What would you think about, rather than trying to reinvent the wheel, put that mailer up, if putting it up on a screen is what you're gonna do, and
I would
just.
do something simpler. I
Well,
would-
no, you have a paragraph, make one statement about the paragraph, and then go down to the next and make one statement about that paragraph. And because all it does is reinforce the mailer.
Well, you could hand that out, make sure they all have a copy.
Well, I just mailed out
Yeah.
3,600,
Give them all a copy,
2,600.
but instead of going through that bit by bit, that's a bit long and it's very complicated, there's a lot of figures in there. But I think the question you guys have for them is basically, a bigger one is like, the predicament you're in, you need $640,000 in order to maintain the projects and the services that you're doing now. And, I don't, these are all good points, and individuals will use certain of those points because they're more comfortable with them. But instead of try to feed it all to them, I would just paint the big picture and your solution, and then say, what do you think, is there a chance? And then you'll see what kind of questions they have, and you'll see if they care where you'll cut, or you'll find out if they care whether or not they live here or vote here. If you listen to them, they'll give you a lot of, leads on how you should try to present this to the public and actually make a go of it, But you gotta listen to them, you can't start talking to them,
Yeah.
telling them, why they're wrong, because that would piss me off, and it would piss off anybody else who's sitting here. If they come here for a focus group, you're asked for your opinion, and you give it, and then you guys sit there and tell them, well, you don't have all the facts, so you're wrong, so. If you're gonna do that, might as well not even listen to them, so just lay it out there and then let them lay on.
Are you gonna have another meeting, finance, before then?
Yeah.
Yes, next
Next
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Okay. On the public input, I'll just give my input.
Well, go ahead now if you don't mind. I think we can,
Want me to go out there, or?
We need this on a microphone.
Yeah.
And Rob, actually, everything you
Yeah.
just said is not, nobody has heard it, so.
It was good, but nobody heard it.
So drunken hobo syndrome.
All right, John Ludwigson.
Rob will be up there on that.
First of all, I do appreciate what you guys have gone through to do this, because I know it's not easy, and especially Bud and Janet have spent a lot of time. And it's kind of embarrassing to not have other people who may, show up at the last minute and have not gone through and tried to understand this. So I'm coming from that point, that I'm trying to be proactive for you guys. And what I say tonight, and at the focus group, is not a negative thing, it's just that I think there's a lot of things that I've heard even last meeting. Janet's right, I think you, and a lot of you, Lou said, you do have to come about this, what happens if. But I look at it also, what happens, or what are we gonna get for our money? And especially when you look at $640,000, that's what you're asking for. Out of that $640,000, you're asking an increase of $555,000 in the highway. Now, we all know what happened last year. That got defeated, so that blew the budget out of it. This year, you're asking for $1.1 million. So how are you gonna phrase that? Are you gonna have that referendum first? Because if that gets defeated, you're down $598,000 out of that $640,000 that you need. So, again, this is my, what I don't like to hear is, well, we're gonna cut snow plowing services. When, again, last meeting, I said, we had a hard winter, and in the budget, we didn't even meet our budget for that. So you're asking for 200 and, this is what citizens are gonna be saying. $266,000 for equipment. That's what you're asking for. So we got by this year without equipment. So why should we worry about $10,000 maybe in wages to help get through the snow plowing season? That's gonna be the rationale. Why do we need $90,000 for fire trucks? I think they're gonna ask this question. Under new loans, it went from 500,000 to 750,000. What was that 250,000 used for? What was the original $500,000 used for? I mean, those are things that I think they're gonna ask. And, you know, you can say it's either or, but I don't know if it's necessarily gonna be an either or, because if you don't pass the highway, again, you're gonna be cutting, I mean, if you don't pass the highway, then it seems to me you should have a separate budget without that in there. So now you're only gonna be cutting $60,000, and then that's your responsibility to cut $60,000. Does that make sense to
Yeah.
you?
Yeah.
I mean, because before it was the tax levy override first.
Right.
That got defeated. Then it was the regular budget, which had all of the money for the highways as if it was gonna be approved, didn't get approved. So how are you gonna, you know, put that in order? Is it gonna be tax levy override? Then is it gonna be the highway? Because if the highway gets defeated, then you should have a separate budget that's gonna be pretty simplified. It's gonna be reduced by $598,000.
You know, just to your question, though, that you had brought up, John, about the procedure from the last town board meeting, we got materials from the Towns Association. They have it as from Black Hawk County, but the order of procedure is exactly the way that was followed. I was surprised that it's statutory in that sense. It's the levy first, the levy override second, highway expenditures have to come afterward, according to the procedure from the Towns Association. They don't have the statutory authority for it, but this is how they suggested it's done.
But is that the way it has to be done? If
Well,
it's
that
just from
was-
them? Blackhawk?
That's the way we've done it for the past,
I know, but I'm
Do
just
we have
saying,
to do it that way?
Yeah.
do you have to do it that way? Because it just, I think that created a lot of problems last year. And you all know what it did.
It was
Where did that
perceived as sneaky.
where did that 350,000, that's right.
Yeah.
Where did that $350,000 go? I know you put 100,000 into contingency, which is great, which, you know, I'm glad that you did that. But people are gonna say, well, we got through this year with another $225,000, or last year with $225,000 or so that wasn't used for highways. And again, that's, out of the 640,000, a lot of this is for highways. And out of that, 266,000 is for equipment. And that's gonna be a hard sell. And if you can't sell the highway, then what's gonna happen to your regular budget? Then I think you can say, well, we're not gonna pave this road, we're not gonna pave that road, we're not gonna pave that road. But that sounds better than saying we're gonna cut snow plowing, which is maybe $10,000. Maybe. I mean, again, we went under budget this year for the wages, so.
If I
I interpret that as a threat, and I think a lot of people will do that too. And they can't rationalize $10,000 maybe spending additional.
This is, I've got then sort of a question too for Rob. You don't want to get into any kind of an argument or defense, but it's not so much that we're gonna cut snow plowing, but one of the big trucks out there is in horrible shape.
Well, that's where
Yeah.
the educational portion,
Yeah.
Mike Walker or whoever, head of the highway department, needs to come and say, these are the facts.
Well, we actually talked about it, you may have been here, I don't know, about actually having the trucks out for people to look at, because during that meeting, we all went into the bay and looked at the equipment and went, oh, now we understand.
Yeah, I just don't think people will, they'll believe what they want to believe, in essence. But I mean, if you don't give them any information, then that's, I think, a worst-case scenario for you. You know, stating facts like we haven't had a new truck in so many years. I mean, those are facts. You were talking before about what, you know, what the reality is of,
Of course, visually looking at the cancer on the back of that truck was
Yeah.
pretty eye-opening.
but anyways, those are my things I would think about before even your next meeting. And I appreciate being asked to be on that focus group.
Thank you, John.
Thank
To answer your question, John, it seems like it can be in any order.
Any order.
At the beginning of the town meeting, the town meeting chairperson shall state the business to be transacted and the order in which the business will be considered. No proposal to levy a tax may be acted on out of the order stated by the town meeting chairperson.
Okay,
Out of the
Well,
order.
then,
It's gonna be the big sell of over $1.1 million. And if you don't get that, then you're already,
right,
your
And-
budget has been decreased by $598,000.
I agree with that.
Yeah, and that would be a show of good faith, that, you know,
really do.
we aren't trying to be sneaky.
Is get the the $5,000 per mile thing, get that passed first. Cause if
Why
that
not?
doesn't go, the $5,000 per mile,
Yeah, why not?
yeah, get that passed first, cause if that doesn't go, then, you know,
Then you need to cut 60,000 out of the budget.
right, and
Or,
that's donations.
Mhm.
I'm being a smart aleck, I know, but 60,000 is an easy number to find
Oh, it's a
compared to.
tenth of what we're looking at, yeah.
Right.
but that means you have to have two budgets prepared then. One if it's passed, one if it's not passed.
In order to get it past that night
In November.
in November.
Yeah.
Whatever, right.
Yeah.
Right,
I mean, if they don't pass like last year, even though the highway wasn't approved, you still approved the regular budget, so you're almost,
But you could still ask, does that make sense though, to ask for a levy override then?
no,
Wouldn't need it.
you wouldn't
You
need-
wouldn't need it.
So what order are we gonna use?
Go with the highway first. I mean,
Highway
that's,
budget
that's
is-
the straw that'll break the camel's back.
But then the alternate budget that John's suggesting has to be the one that just simply has the
Right.
highway funds out of it
Right.
as the budget, as the one that the town would approve.
Right.
Wouldn't that be the alternate then? That would be budget B?
Yep.
Now, the part about coming in under budget with the wages here, we still have the fourth quarter to go. And if we have a ton of snow before Christmas, we could have a bunch of overtime and extra expense in there. So this 2014 total here of 154 versus the revised budget of 161.9, that 154 is just an estimate for the rest of the year. If we get into a bunch of big-time snow this fall, that could pop that up to near or over the 161. So the 154 would not be necessarily a gospel number here. So that's something to look at here too.
Are we?
Well, but
And these
but we're
wages,
sitting at the 17th now of November. Well, that's when the budget hearing is. So it gives you a month and a half approximately. So
was there a reason why you lowered it from?
that's how the calculations came out in the, with the first 8 months through August, and then figuring in the rest of the year, adding that on. That's just how it came out on paper.
It's just averaging.
So figuring a 40-hour week and then figuring so much overtime, if you get a lot more overtime, like I say, with snow plowing or anything else, that could pop that number up. Not saying it will, but this again is just a estimated number. And this number we look at, this number is going in 4 months before the end of the year. and it's going into the paper 2 weeks before, at least 2 weeks before the budget hearing, so that's what normally, in years past, we've gone through the first 9 months of the year and then just figured the last quarter, but we've got an extra quarter in here of, guessing the rest of the year.
If the highway
But you got your
5,000 doesn't, if that 5,000 per mile doesn't pass, and we have to go back in and redo the highway budget using that 500,000 per mile, or 5,000 per mile, we don't have to republish a budget. We just have to have those numbers come in at the 5,000 per
That's right.
mile. Okay.
Right, Paul.
And so are we saying though, if let's say the 5,000 per mile is the only thing that's allowed, would the remaining levy cover the $200,000 that's going into the capital fund and the 90,000 that's going into the fire district fund? Would we have that 290,000?
I don't think so.
I don't think we'd quite make it.
Could be close,
Yeah,
but
yeah, you'd have to calculate out, and maybe that's something we could talk about next week.
I think, yeah, if we could, more burden on you two, let's do. All right,
That's just a couple of lines.
yeah, let's,
I mean, we
let's,
don't need to.
is everybody comfortable doing the highway first?
Yes.
I think that's a smart idea, I really do. All right, let's then, if it passes, then you go, obviously, the levy override, that's, that's a foregone on that one. If it doesn't, then we need to know what we've got left and what it covers.
That correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think that'll be an easy number to calculate for
Sure.
next week.
Yeah.
Sure.
So,
Because you're gonna take it out of public works and capital outlay for
Well,
highway.
Highway.
so if it passes the highway, then we go to the levy override.
And
What
it
if that
doesn't.
doesn't pass? Then are we kind of chasing our tail here?
See, I think that's why they have the order, they have it in the order in which they had it there, where the levy is the first thing that's considered. The levy
Well-
override is the first thing that's considered, then the levy. And that's why if the levy override was not approved, that was A. B was the levy, that was allowable.
Right.
And then C was the highway.
But it does give you the latitude then of exceeding the 5,000 per mile. I'm assuming the levy override doesn't pass. It
Okay.
does give you that latitude to shift
Money.
money into the highways, take it from somewhere else.
Okay, okay.
Say that again?
Well, I'm assuming that if the Public Works budget passes, then you go to the levy override. It fails. We're back to what is allowable under the,
Oh, okay. I
Okay.
gotcha.
but within that budget, you now can spend more than 5,000 per mile.
Correct.
So that gives board finance the latitude to say, okay, if this needs to be done in Public Works, let's do that, but we've got to find the offset somewhere else.
Which we haven't found yet.
True. True. I mean, it's going to be robbing Peter to pay Paul if you go above the 5,000, but
And that you do at a future date. You don't
you have to, yeah, you don't have to do that immediately.
You don't do that in that night because there's a lot of work involved there.
Yeah.
Another thing for your focus group, you might consider, developing a short list of 4 or 5 questions that you'd like to ask them, so that, like, what do you think is our best method to proceed, or whatever you would like to know from folks that could sort of give them something to respond to, rather than just generate their own questions.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
They're giving you their time, and you should to them, take advantage.
Yep.
Is there an answer why that went from 500 to 250,000? What was that 250,000 used for this year?
Went into capital reserve. That was done at the December 2nd meeting.
And capital reserve is to be used in any part of the budget.
No,
No.
capital reserve has specific line items
For
that it's
capital
being reserved
expenditures.
for.
And what did it go into?
It's
Um,
sitting there.
Oh,
It's there. It's just sitting there.
It hasn't been spent.
There was money taken out of it to do, the Garrett Bay Road work.
Yeah.
In the
I thought that
August
came from reserve.
meeting, was it August or June? No, June,
June,
where
July,
the public came back and they said, okay, we will give you permission to go 80,000 over.
I thought that was contingency fund.
It came out, the road work came out of capital reserve, and all the rest of the money came out of contingency.
Came out of both funds.
But just the road work came out of capital reserve.
John, with the focus group, is it possible to rent a sound system to give every person a microphone?
We have the pass-around mic.
I'll give them the pocket mic. Or if you set them up here,
Yeah, I think,
they can share mics up here, and you can get 8 or 9 people sitting up here, and then if there's some that don't have room, we'll put them on the end, give them the pocket mic.
What if we all sit out there?
Well,
yeah,
we
like
should.
Rob was saying,
Yeah.
you know, you only should have one presenter. And
Put
give the
board on one
presenter,
side of a table and
give the
focus group on
presenter the
other.
pocket mic, and then let the focus group sit here with the microphone so that what they have to say can
Two
be
on each
recorded.
one, yeah, you've got 6 phone mics up here.
Well, no, of course, then it's not on. What I'm suggesting is that we all sit out there.
well, then you're really moving away from the mics.
Then you don't really need them if you're real close together either.
Right.
Yeah, but if there is anybody here listening, it's really hard for them to hear in that configuration.
But
That isn't what it's about.
that's what it, yeah.
Yeah, that's,
This is about, as Rob says, listening to this group.
yeah.
Once I've been here, you set up round tables around
Yeah.
and people sit
Yeah.
around, and that's almost the same as like a big semicircle or sitting around a campfire by playing.
Well, and let's
The
face it,
acoustics are fine, I mean,
the dais is a little imposing. I mean, it creates a separation, and that's what we don't want.
If you just put the chairs in a circle, then we just
Sure.
all sat that way.
But then what do we do for sound? If
We
there-
don't worry about the
If there are
sound.
150
We're gonna be
people
able-
on the back end of the
No, this is
building.
just
Oh,
for
no,
the,
focus group.
this is just the focus group. This is just our
Yeah, I
What
practice
you wanna
session.
make is informal.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I really like your suggestion, Rob, to keep the presentation extremely simple and then give it to the people. What do you suggest we do, to listen? I hadn't thought of that angle, but you're absolutely right. They've already read this publication. We don't need to beat them about the head, trying to, when they come here. I really
it's
like
really
your
complex,
suggestion.
too.
Yeah,
Keep it simple and
yeah,
try to help them.
yeah. And that's really
Do
what
we-
we're asking. is
Do
for
we need
help.
the bullet points?
I don't
Maybe
think
just
we
start
do.
off, all right. You've got our proposal. What do you think?
You might have them available to stimulate something, but
Yeah.
beyond that, I don't think so with the individuals that I know that are on there. You
But
won't have to,
maybe Rob's suggestion of a list of questions, perhaps a short list of questions that we would like to throw out there just to kind of stimulate some thought.
Good idea.
And if there are other people that show up and they wanna participate, don't try to shut them up, don't try to squash
Yeah.
them. Just absorb them as best you can. It'll work a lot better. You can't, it's really hard to sit on people and stuff like that. It'd be good practice for the hearings too. But they have to follow the same rules, I mean, everybody needs to
Yep.
speak at once and you gotta,
Yeah.
be polite, be civil about the whole thing and see if you can put your heads together and come up with some good ideas.
Yeah.
And, if they're willing to participate, fine.
Peter?
Who monitors the public? presenter would have to allow someone else to speak, I assume.
Whoever the facilitator is.
If I were here, I'd facilitate it, but I don't think I could be on the ninth. But a facilitator would be the right role for someone to put in there that
Yeah.
tries to keep everybody talking at once and make sure everybody participates. And
Would Bill Rizzo be a good facilitator?
but he's the one that told you to call me.
Oh, he did, okay. And see, I remember him saying he loves coming to Door County, and if we ever
Yeah.
need him,
Yeah. I think that's, you met him at the meeting.
in the finance seminar, yeah.
Called me.
I understand, Rob, about the listening, but let's say, using John's comments tonight, if that were some of the things that we heard at the focus group, do we just jot those down and not address them right then and there at all?
Well, you know, I put a I wouldn't go overboard on addressing them right there. You're not there to try to convince these guys of anything. You know, you're there to try to get some information from them. So I take copious notes and
And
try
then
to learn something.
in
but
the
maybe put your head together
presentations,
afterwards.
so in the presentations then, it would really be addressing those questions that we had compiled from the focus group, to say, you might be wondering why we purchased a fire truck.
Yeah, that would be,
Yeah, mark those down as areas that we need to work on.
Peter?
You would not argue with.
Not at all.
But what you might do is you might draw them out. You might ask them, what do you think about this, or what you're saying, just try to get them more information, rather than just make a simple statement and say, that maybe you'd like them to expand on it a little bit more to understand what the point is.
all right. And I think it'll work. You know, a big problem with local government is the citizen input is limited to like 3 minutes at the beginning of a meeting.
Yeah.
And in a public hearing, when really at the public hearing, you already made up your minds. And they sense that. They come to a public hearing to have their voice heard, and they realize you've already decided what you're gonna do. So why did I come here anyway? So it just gets people really frustrated. But what you're trying to do here is different. You're bringing them up front. It's gonna be very conversational and let everybody have a, kick at the can, so to speak. I think it's a really good strategy for you guys to learn something, what people think. And, people have a lot of good ideas to offer. There'll be some not so good ideas, but wade through them. Keep notes with the good ones. So I think it's a really great idea what you're trying to do.
All right, who'd like to lead the focus group?
Lead it or facilitate it? Because there's kind of there is a difference.
Yep.
I mean, I have a background in facilitation, I could do that.
There you
but-
go.
But I would not be comfortable leading it because I don't think I have the background that the rest of this group has.
I guess I'm of the opinion it should not be a board member. And maybe I'm wrong.
You and me, kid.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I just,
No, I think that's a valid.
Yeah, I know it probably is with the,
Yeah, it is.
Remember when the Three Stooges were in line and they said, who wants to volunteer? And everybody stepped back except them, and they were just left out in front there. John just had everybody step back.
Now we got the hobo and we got the three students.
Oh, dear.
well, think about it.
Well, we can talk about it next
Yeah,
Tuesday.
but yeah.
Next Tuesday, there's a VFW meeting here.
So can we meet at the North Fire Station?
We certainly can.
Why don't we do that?
Is that the one up
North
in
Fire
Elsa Bay?
Station?
At the North Fire Station. 6:30?
6:30. I think it's easier there than at the Wellness Club. And if the weather continues the way it is, it'll be a lot warmer. Okay? Anything else? Well, thank you, and Rob, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for coming.
Are you
If-
guys having a meeting next Tuesday to talk more?
Yes, yeah, and we'll be at the North Fire Station though,
Okay,
so,
'cause I think I could make that.
That'd be
okay,
great. That would
that'd be
be
great.
Keep listening, so when the
Yeah.
20th and 21st, third time I know a little bit better what I'm getting into.
Okay. Any other public input? All right, I move we adjourn then. Is there a second? All in favor? We stand adjourned. Thank you very much.